The ECHL is the Tier 3 pro hockey league in North America. It's a very tough league with a lot of games and bus traveling. In the last decades, we saw the NHL take up a lot of influence in this league with many affiliations and ownerships. The teams have great fans and facilities, and it's the most common starting point for college players that turn pro. There's a lot of movement downwards to the SPHL and upwards to the American Hockey League. And with these movements, there also comes job insecurity, because the teams can terminate the players' contracts on any day. According to their stats, players can get a lot of good import spots in Europe from this league. Our next interview is with Mike Couch from Canada. Mike spent most of his career in the East Coast Hockey League after a successful career in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. And the East Coast is the league we're going to talk to him about today. Hi Mike, thanks for being here today with us.
Martin, good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the first question will be, can you explain your junior and pro career to us?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have some really good coaching in junior. I played for Sean McKenzie in the Halifax Mooseheds, as well as Andre Tourigny and Rouen Noranda, both in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. After 4 years in that league and a separate life education, I was recruited to go to school in the AUS, which is the Canadian university sport, but it's in Atlantic Canada, where eight universities have high-level hockey programs, and they do heavily recruit out of major junior. So you usually get the top 20-year-olds from each, the OHL, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and the Western League, coming to school out east. And that league easily is probably comparable to, possibly the American League, or just a step below the American League. So it's phenomenal hockey. It's a good way for guys to continue to develop and earn a shot at possibly playing the game a little bit after they get their education. For me, I didn't quite finish the degree side. My agent gave me a call because I had an offer to come to Italy actually and play, and jump the pond after my second year at St. Thomas University in Fredericton, and signed over in Torino. Had a phenomenal time over there, which is one of the reasons why when you came into my life, it was an opportunity for me to come back and work for your company there. So a little shout out for you and what you're doing. But other than that, like I said, I had a great time playing over there. It was my introduction to professional hockey, and then I came back. Cindy Bauer was a big part of my training this summer with her professional power skating resume, with a lot of NHL guys. And working with her, I was able to continue to develop my game and was able to go to the Houston Aeros in the AHL, where I was re-signed, where I played for a former Calder Cup champion in Stefan Walby. And he was basically the reason why I was able to play for 9-10 years professionally. He taught me how to be a pro. He realized that I had a lot of leadership skills and things that were essential in hard work to survive in professional hockey. And after 2007, I started the journey in North America down in the minors, and the East Coast League was my first stop.
Yes, so in the East Coast, you've got a lot of transfers up and down to the American leagues. Can you explain how that works and who manages that? Like, do the organizations work together, or who decides if you can go or not?
It all depends. So if you're not on an AHL contract or an NHL contract, you're considered a free agent at the next level. So for instance, if you're not on a contract in the East Coast League and you're playing for the Mississippi Seawolves, which I was back in 2007, any American League team can call you up. If you're playing well and you're the top defender, goalie, whoever it is, any team can call you up. That being said, if you are on a one-way or two-way AHL deal, the team that owns your rights, they are the only team that can call you up unless they get permission from, unless another team gets permission from the team that owns your rights, then you can get called up to another club. So for instance, if what's a good example here? At the time, the Minnesota Wild, their American League team was in Houston. So Houston, if I was on a contract with Houston, Houston would be the only team that I could get called up to. But say Chicago in the same division, the Chicago Wolves, they wanted to call me up for a weekend, they would have to get permission from Houston in order to call me up. You would like to think that they are good for the year, but as time goes on and you learn, and if you're in the minors for a little while, you see a lot of horror stories and a lot of things. But I've seen contracts that are good for like 48 hours and that's it. They bring a guy in who sold himself to be doing, certain things, and he shows up and he's not the player that he's advertised or what he sold himself as. Those guys are in and out. Or if there's numerous injuries, and you're hurting for players, they'll just call guys up from maybe the Southern Professional League or the Federal League and bring those guys in just for a weekend to fill bodies and then send them right back down. It sounds terrible. It is. There's no human touch to it. There's not much humanity behind it. It's like a meat market. And it is, what have you done for me lately? And the old saying, which most athletes know, is you're only as good as your last shift. So it puts a little extra pressure on you and lights a fire under your butt to make sure that you're bringing your best every day. But at that level, you're playing against guys that are trying to feed their kids and their wives, and you're taking food off their plate if you're taking money out of that guy's paycheck. So there's only a certain amount of money to go around, like in all aspects of life, and unfortunately in the East Coast League level, if you're not the first dog to the bowl, there's not much left.
Yeah, so you know a lot about injuries. How is it in the East Coast? Are you very well insured, or who takes care of all of those expenses? And do you still get the salary?
That's a very good question. For my personal experience, all of my injuries happened during play or practice. So insurance and legality wise, the team and the league is responsible to cover your medical costs and get you back to health. Sometimes that is in the eyes of the beholder. Sometimes teams think that the level of care or your health should be, is different in maybe the eyes of the player. So, I was fortunate enough. I had a major injury in 2008. I ended up shattering my left leg in a fight against Miles Stays in Gwinnett. I was playing for Mississippi at the time, and that was December 8th. And it took me an entire year to come back, but our team, the minute I went down, got to take care of this guy. He's an assistant captain for our team. And there's a chance that I was going to be able to come back for the playoffs. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but I had surgery within a week of my injury. That's a bit of a horror story in itself. I broke my leg in a fight in Gwinnett, which is just outside of Atlanta. So it was in the second period. I laid in the trainer's room for the rest of the game. They wrapped it, put a makeshift cast on it, put me on the bus. I laid on the bus floor with my leg up all the way back to Biloxi, Mississippi, which probably would have been about 7 or 8 hours. Just munching painkillers left and right, like the most uncomfortable ride of my life. Every bump, everything, like you feel it like you wouldn't believe. And then when I returned to Mississippi, then our team doctors got a hold of me, and within 3 or 4 days, I had surgery. They put 3 metal plates and 13 titanium screws in there to hold it together, and thus started the great journey of rehab. I have nothing but positive to say about Mississippi, the doctors there, the team, the organization, the owners. They took care of me. There was no issues with workers' comp. They kept me down there after the season to rehab my injury and make sure that my career didn't end there and I had a chance to keep playing. So not everybody has that luxury and a good experience. I would probably say the majority of guys don't, but for me, I don't have anything bad to say about it. And thus, if you look at my resume, I kept playing. I kept going back to that league. So it wasn't that I felt like I wasn't taken care of. There was still that fire and that passion to achieve the next level. So I just kept going for it.
Yeah, so in the coast, where do you live? In apartments or hotels? And who pays for that? And what about if you have a family or girlfriend?
So all your housing is taken care of. Majority of guys, most teams probably have an apartment complex in a gated community. I know in the south, a lot of those communities are, 4 or 5 buildings, or even larger to a 10-12 scale unit, and then a pool, weight room, kind of like again a gated little mini community, usually on a golf course or within walking distance of a golf course. The team pays for your rent, all that. Obviously, as a professional, you're required to pay for your phone bills and all that stuff, internet, cable. Some places incorporate that, but most teams either, back when I played, had a deal with a local company as a sponsor, and they would hook us up with cable and internet. You're paid weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the organization. When I played, I believe the salary cap might have been like, I don't know, right around $12,000 a week. So do the math there, 12,000 divided by 20 players. There's not a lot of pie to go around. Usually guys that may have been there for a long time. I know in South Carolina, Nate Kaiser rented a place from actually a childhood buddy of mine from back in Halifax. Jim and Darla Wilson owned a place in South Carolina, and Nate used to rent that because he was married with a kid. And I know I've had guys that are married with families that live in houses away from, the apartment scene and all that stuff, just because they're in a different stage of their life. And, when you first come into pro and you're, in your early 20s, you're going hard both on and off the ice. And sometimes when guys are in different stages of their life, that can be a bit of a distraction for some guys. So trying to keep those guys away from the circus, if you will, is a good idea from a management and ownership standpoint. As far as food goes, you're at home. You're usually, you're cooking if you've got that skill in your toolbox, but a lot of guys don't, again, so they're going out to eat. Majority of the towns in the minors have restaurants and casinos and bars that love to get on board and support the local team, so they'll end up giving you like a sponsored deal where anybody who plays or is part of the organization as a staff or a player will get 50% off their total bill. So sandwich shops, restaurants, things like that. So even though you're not making a ton of money, they make it feasible for you to live and have a good time. And the biggest thing about that 50% off is guys forget that you got to tip on the original amount, not just the 50% off. So that's always good for a couple of eyebrows that get raised up, and a couple of calls where I get called into the office to be torn a new one because some of the guys think that tipping is a city in China and not a real thing. So, on the road we get per diem just like the American League and the NHL. Obviously, it's scaled down differently. When I was playing, I think it was $30 a day, which isn't much, but all hotels, breakfast is included, lunch, pregame. Usually, pasta, chicken, rice, veggies, things like that. So it's not, you're not having a big T-bone or prime rib, so it's not going to cost you $85. But, lunch, and then usually post-game, it's delivered right to the bus with the subs or the pizza or the wraps or whatever you got going on. Depends on what city you got to go to next. But, it's a challenge. But like anything in life, sometimes you don't always love the conditions of your job, but you love your job, and it's a means to an end. Most of the guys are in the coast, unless you're a lifer, usually have the aspirations of going to the next level or have been at the next level and end up being reassigned down low. So it's a challenging time. A lot of guys don't like to put their future on hold for that, but it depends how much passion you have and where you're at. And I think a lot of it depends on the city you're in as well and how the organization is run.
So you also personally moved up and down to the American League a couple times. Can you explain how much different the hockey and the lifestyle is?
It's probably just on a bigger scale. Obviously, in the American League, your per diem goes up. Again, when I was there, I think it was $63 a day when we were in Houston. And we had a lot of perks, same thing. I remember in Houston, they had the big Nestle ice cream fridge in the lounge there that the guy used to come and fill every day. So, the only downfall of that was you had to weigh in every day. So, they treated us well, everything. Minnesota had paid and built them a facility out in Sugar Land, Texas. So things were very professionally done, private, had our own setup, all that stuff. So I think just the biggest thing is, the way players are treated, obviously we have a players union. The American League and the East Coast League have the same union. The NHL is a separate one, obviously. So the union's done a great job fighting for players' rights, making sure that there's an even playing field for everybody, and the health insurance, the dental, and all that stuff is covered. I know off-season insurance is a big thing for guys, especially when you're playing. You're a Canadian person and you're living in the U.S. with a family and kids. So majority of guys that are on NHL or AHL deals usually have their insurance worked in, whereas in the East Coast League, certain luxuries go by the wayside. So you've got to be careful and really do your due diligence on where you go and where you play. But I've been out of it for 5-6 years now, so I'm sure everything has gone up like anything with the world, with inflation and all these things. So I'm sure the union's done a great job keeping up. I know certain things they're trying to avoid, some of the darker spots and the black eyes that the minors have. But I haven't. I know that the American League is trying to. I don't know.
Okay, so do you think the hockey is much better in the American League?
Not really. It's actually easier to play. The funny thing about sports is the higher you go, like the highest level, the easier the game becomes, because everybody has the IQ to think the game at that level, and you trust that everyone on the ice will do their job. So again, in Houston, Kevin Constantine was a big believer in being predictable for your teammates, right? So we would have lines in our playbook. We'd have different sections on the ice. So if the puck was in zone 1, it was automatically going to zone 2. So you, as a D-man, you had to be there for your partner, and as soon as it was in zone 2, it was going to zone 3, and that's either up the middle, to the center, or to the wall, right? So there was little things that you just get instilled into your brain from a system standpoint. But I found that it was easier to play in the American League than it is in the East Coast League. And I'm sure guys at the NHL would say the same thing, because if you're a high-end American League guy, you're probably a fringe NHL guy, and vice versa. If you're a high-end East Coast League guy, you're a fringe American League guy, or you can you're stuck behind players that are on contracts or are 50-goal guys. Again, there's a logjam of players. There's only a certain number of jobs. So it's difficult to that next level within the team system, because obviously it's a team game. You're trying to win games for your team. At the same time, you're trying to play to get out of there so you can get to the next level. So it's a fine line between balancing it, and hockey players do a phenomenal job in teaching one another and passing on, hey, I've been here for a couple of years, here's how we do things here, I'll take you under my wing. Or, hey, you're called up, you're only here for a weekend, here's what we do, here's how we do it, welcome aboard, and make sure you're incorporated into things so that there isn't that big shock and awe moment. It's just a smooth transition.
Okay, Mike, so one last question. Did you have agents managing your transfers, or did you do that on your own?
Yeah, I had a couple different agents at the time. I won't mention any names just for privacy reasons, but the guy that found me my job in Europe, he didn't quite turn out to be the honest, upstanding gentleman that he had led me to believe. So I replaced him with another gentleman and used him for probably 5-6 years. And then by the time towards the end of my career, my last 3 or 4 years, I was negotiating, my deals myself. By that time, I'm close to being, I'm in my late 20s, approaching 30. So, I've been around, I've seen enough. I know what I need. I know what I need to look out for, how, what they're trying to get away with. So eventually you just live and learn like anything, and figure out a way to protect yourself and make sure you get what you need. But at the same time, as much as you want the most money, you also need to realize, well, we need some money for some other guys to have a good team, right? So, I was very, very fortunate to play with some good teams and have some great organizations that money sometimes wasn't really an issue. So they would find ways to make it up to us or take care of us in other ways. So, today's business, I'm sure it's a little bit different, but at the end of it, I had no purpose for an agent, to be honest with you.
That was it for today, Mike. Thanks so much for being here with us again.
Oh, no problem, Marty. Thanks for having me. And I think what you're doing is phenomenal. I love these little interviews and these clips, and they're very educational. So keep up the good work. Thanks, man.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Thank you, and talk soon.
Again,